Welcome to another episode of the Tradepreneur Show. Patrick Summers, your host, co-host Mike Costa, and a very special guest today. Very excited. This is Francisco Rodriguez. Now, Francisco is a dear friend, but not only that, he's an amazing sales professional and my business partner at General Air Conditioning and Plumbing. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Excited to be here. Nervous, but excited.
You feel like you made the big time. You have finally made it.
Holy crap.
Okay.
Here I am. I made it. Forget about selling $5 million.
All right.
I'm on a podcast now.
Okay. Good.
Well-
All right. Good mindset.
Well, one of the reasons I'm really excited to have you here is you've got quite a story, right? You started in the trades how many years ago?
25 years ago,
Okay, and it was right out of high school?
right out of high school.
Okay, and now you're my business partner, co-owner of a successful air conditioning, plumbing, electrical
looking.
company, and very good looking too. And you have pretty much worked in every facet of HVAC as you came up, right?
Absolutely.
And then on that journey, became one of the top performing salespeople in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, look at you. No,
Sounds like me.
don't worry about humility here. So, what I want, because I know there's a lot of people out there that are either in high school considering a career in the trades,
Mhm.
or are in the trades and they're out there grinding every day, and they're looking for that advice, that individual that can share their story, right? And then there's also business owners that have come up the way you have, and I think most in the trades have. So I'd like to, if we could, I'd like to just have you start talking. How did you get in the trades? How did you progress along?
Well, the way I got into trades was right out of high school. I actually, in high school, there was an ad. Back then, there was actually work experience in high school. So there was an ad for a delivery driver at General Air. And the job was from 2:30 to 5 p.m. every single day. And the reason I got hired at General Air was because back then it was such a small company that the old owner, Frank, we couldn't afford to have every vehicle stocked with parts. So I drove a little Toyota truck that had all the parts in it. And what I would do is when a technician would call for refrigerant, for a contactor, capacitor, I would be the one delivering it to them while doing the service call. And say they filled up the refrigerant tank, then I would take it, and then whatever tech would call next, I would go to the next call. So, and the reason I got hired is because it was a peak time of the day when it was like really hot when we got our service calls. So that's how I started.
Okay,
But
then.
right at, started at, back then, top dollar, $4.25 an hour.
Look out. Look out.
$4.25 an hour. And the most exciting thing was, I remember in the first week of my job, I got a 50-cent raise. And I was like super excited. Even wrote a thank you letter to the owner because, he gave me a 50-cent raise within my first week. And he said, I see something in you. That was it. But over the years, I got very excited with seeing what the technicians did in the field. The money they were making. And even back then, I was at $4.25. They were making, $10, $15 an hour. So I'm like, oh my God, like they're making 2-3 times as much as I am. How can I get there? So my journey starts with me in the warehouse and seeing what the technicians were doing, and then asking them if I could ride with them on the weekends at my expense. I don't want to get paid, and then I would buy them lunch and carry their tools just so I could learn what they were doing.
Okay,
Wow.
Is there a mother, father, a grandfather, grandmother, an uncle, a brother, or a sister? Where did that work ethic come from?
My dad.
See, okay. As is in many cases with someone like you, but did your dad have that same drive, that same
absolutely.
go-getiveness?
And I think it comes from my dad. I remember when I used to go out, and my dad would be like, "Okay, you got to be home by 10," and I would be home at 11.
Oh boy.
An hour late. Like his first thing was like, "Okay, next day you're gonna get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you're gonna help me wash the car."
Love it.
Literally, like every time the whole freaking car from the top of the hood, like the paint started coming off because they didn't wait because we washed it so many times. But my work ethic comes from my dad, and
Okay.
and also believe my grandfather.
Sure. Love it.
So that obviously led you to be able to change positions and then become a technician.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and then Frank,
He
knew you were doing that?
in the beginning he didn't.
No.
No, he didn't. He didn't know that I would pay the technicians, buy them lunch. Not pay them, but buy them lunch and carry their tools. And he's like, what do you, because one day he called me on the weekend here on a Saturday. He's like, what are you doing here? He's like, you're not scheduled to work. I go, I know. I said, but I'm riding with the technicians. I just want to see what they're doing and learn what they're doing. So hopefully if it's something that interests me, one day I could do the same thing.
So you're doing that, and why I would assume your friends or your peer group are out goofing off on a Saturday or maybe working other jobs and stuff. And your drive was such that you're like for free, and really not for free. You're paying because you're buying them lunch as well.
Yeah. And I think it's educating myself.
Okay. And to that educational point, how fast did you pick it up?
I think very fast. I think that's what's amazing about the trades. That I think it's like the best kept secret when it comes to somebody being able to make a ton of money.
Yep.
Because it's something that you can learn very quickly if you apply yourself every single day. And most importantly, I think you have to have self accountability to yourself before anything. And once you have that self accountability, everything else will follow. And with this, with that, it's discipline as well.
Sure.
And so did you start in service? Did you start a new construction?
No, so I started in new construction. And back then we used to do a lot of new construction. We did a lot of custom homes. We used to do what's called underground, where all the ductwork is like 5 feet underground. You're digging trenches, and like the most F-up thing would be if the person that was designing the job missed it by a couple of feet. And now the excavator can't go in there and dig, so we would be the ones digging the damn trenches. And then I remember Frank would be like, look, his whole thing was like every technician that works at General Air, even if they're not on the construction side, just to keep them humble, they would have to do at least one underground a year to keep them on the same page.
Unbelievable.
Man. And then I remember you telling me that you used to go out on the weekends and do jobs, run ductwork and stuff.
Yeah, back then, it was with Tommy. I remember Tommy. I don't know if he's still alive or not. A lot of years ago. But Tommy was an old guy, had a bad attitude where he didn't give a crap, but in a good way. Learned a lot from him. And I remember like he would, I would be his helper on the jobs. And the way I started that Frank started noticing in my potential was on the weekends, I would, without anybody knowing, even Tommy didn't even know, on the tracks that we were doing, I had the plans for him. So I would go on my own and rough in the houses. And he would arrive on Monday. And he's like, who did the work? And I'm like, Tommy, I came on Saturday. I wanted to help you out, man. So,
oh my God, employee of the century in Francisco.
So you eventually then moved into a service truck, right? Doing service and maintenance.
Yeah. So from the new construction part of it, then I was fascinated with every aspect of the business. Whether it was answering the phone. So then I would volunteer to come in to General on the weekends and actually be a dispatcher and answer the phone calls. And back then, dispatching was a lot of technology. We had a board with a bunch of cards that we were printing out, and we had them on the wall, and we would just, technician would be on this, slot A, slot B, slot C, and we would move the calls around. Now we have a computer, but back then it was with a little board.
It's different, man. It's amazing, the evolution.
Yeah.
And so then you went into service and maintenance.
Yeah, went from new construction. And in new construction, I think literally, I believe that's where I noticed, the sales potential of it. I remember like the way I started like my selling career was, I would do the new construction part of it, do the running the ductwork, line sets, everything. And then I would go back and do what's called the startup for the home when the unit's going to be started for right before the homeowners move in. And one day I was in a home, I still remember it was in PJ West. And the homeowner just happened to be there while I'm doing the startup. And the homeowner said, hey, do you guys have upgraded filters? We saw from Alger, last house had good filters. And I'm like, I don't know, let me call the owners. Let me call and make a phone call. So I call. And back then, they were called dust fighter filters. Sold them for $300 a piece. I would make 10%, so I'd make $30. And then what I ended up doing was I told the superintendent, I'm like, look, if you get me on site every time there's a homeowner here and I saw a filter, I'll buy you lunch from the roach coach, which is,
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
I call the roach coach.
Yeah. Everybody knows because that's basically what it is.
But I will buy you lunch every time I saw one. So that's how I started. And then my career in selling didn't actually, happen until years down the road. But that's where I started selling in the homes when we were doing the startup.
Amazing stuff.
Yeah, it's great stories.
It is a great. It's the American story when you think about it.
Well, and to me, it's like there are so many young men and women out there that there's this pressure to go to college, and college is fine,
Yeah.
right? But there's this guilt, like, what am I going to do? And then the trades, there's so much unknown about the trades. Like, you don't have somebody from the trades going into high schools like you used to. You don't have the shop class in high school where somebody can find out, hey, I enjoy this. I'm good at this. And he's a perfect example of how you get in, how you move up, and then how you apply yourself. But what stands out to me, and it's true of any successful person, and it's like we talked about when we were talking about football. It's the little things you do, the game of inches, the intentionality and the discipline to do the hard stuff, right? Come in on the weekends. Now, unfortunately, in the state of California today, like, they don't want anybody working. They don't want kids working. It's ridiculous, but that's where work ethic is formed, right? That's the good old days. The kid that had to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, milk the cows and everything else before going to school, right?
Yeah.
And man, I get excited hearing you. And I've heard some of these things before.
You were milking the ultimate cow.
How do you make a cow?
So when I started here, I didn't know who Francisco was, right? I started as an entry-level technician. I came in, but I learned quickly was, man, if you get a truck, if when the company gives you a truck, you want to get one of the trucks that Francisco used to drive. If you get one of them, you'd get these trucks, they'd have like premium stereo systems in them, all this stuff, because he'd get a truck and he'd kind of dress it up a little bit.
Sure.
Then there was this truck driving around with these little, what size were they?
20-inch rims.
20-inch rims. I'm like,
I call it the panty dropper.
I was like, whose truck is that? Like, who? And they're, oh, that's Francisco's. I'm like, who's Francisco? I got to meet this guy. And so, and one of the also the amazing things is when he down the road was full-time sales, what we call comfort advisor. He would go out to calls with technicians, really experienced technicians, guys that didn't know his story, and they would try and tell him something, or they get stuck on a problem. And he'd say, oh, give me your screwdriver, give me your whatever. And he'd go in there and he'd look at the wiregram and he'd fix it for him. And they would be like, wait a minute, you're a sales guy. No, I'm a technician that came up, right?
I've been in the trenches.
Yeah.
Literally in the trenches.
Listen, on the other side of this break, we're going to be back with Francisco Rodriguez, my friend and business partner. And he's got a really amazing story about the drive-through at McDonald's. Patrick Summers here, General Air Conditioning and Plumbing. I want to talk to you about our Service Plus program. Right now, for $189, you can get your heating tune-up done, a plumbing inspection, and an electrical inspection to make sure your major systems and components of your home are not only operating efficiently, but most importantly, safely. Let's get you comfortable. Let's make sure you're safe. Let's get your systems tuned up, dialed in, and ready for a new year. Welcome back to the Tradepreneur Show. Patrick Summers, your host, co-host Mike Costa, and business partner and friend Francisco Rodriguez. Now, as promised, there's a story here. And this is a story that he shared with me once, and it was a very profound story to me because I knew it was a moment in his life where his thinking shifted.
Okay.
All right. So, and it happened at the drive-thru in McDonald's, right?
Yes.
All right.
So, back then, I was, had barely moved in with my wife, Claudia. And back then I was making, decent money. I got past the 425. I was probably making like $15 an hour. And I would rough in houses, so I would get paid commission. So on average, I was averaging back then about $800 a week, which is really good money. And I remember we weren't very wise with our money. And my wife and I were like, hey, what do we have for dinner? And she's like, oh, let's go to McDonald's. So we go to McDonald's. We both order a meal, and our cards wouldn't go through.
Oh, boy.
And the card declined, and I felt like shit. So we had, I think it went through for like $4 or $5. So we both got a couple of cheeseburgers, whatever it was. And I remember telling my wife, never again will this happen to us.
Oh, wow.
I will never allow this to happen to us again.
Now, was it just, you just said we weren't being very smart with our money. Was it because, and listen,
And
my first credit card, I maxed out so fast and dug myself hole. There are millions of people. I'm sure there's a ton of people watching this, Patrick.
Yeah.
Who've gone, dude, been there, done that. So was it as you said, just not being smart with how you're
not
spending
being
your
smart
money?
because, like, say I would get a check for $800.
Yep.
And I'm like, I would get it. We would always get paid on a Thursday. So by Friday, Saturday, we're going out all the time.
Yep.
Buying, eating out 3 times a day on
Sure,
the weekends.
sure.
Buying whatever we wanted.
Right.
And then by Monday, we're broke. Didn't have any money. No savings. Nothing.
Wow.
So nothing to fall back on. So I'm like this is bullshit. Like I got to change this. If we want to get anywhere in life, like we cannot move forward like this anymore.
Think about how many people never have that epiphany.
Yeah. I mean, how many people repeatedly go to the drive-thru and have that happen, right? And that's why when he tells me that story, it's so profound because there's so many young people out there, right? Sadly, there's grown adults as well, but there's young people when they finally start making money, our school system doesn't teach people how to manage money, doesn't tell people what to do, what's important. And so you get somebody and you start to get a little success. He's a micro example of what we see in professional sports.
Oh God. Yeah.
Right?
Great analogy.
And but Francisco had that, like, I've got a wife. I'm not going to allow this to happen again. I will never be in this position again. And it's amazing when you can have that shift in thinking and you can anchor it in what you can do. Right? I mean, and look at you now. You're
How
I don't know if you're still good looking, but
how tough was it that next day or that next weekend to go, all right, honey, McDonald's is still fresh in my psyche. How tough was it to affect that change? Or was it easy?
No, I think it was a little bit hard because we had to change our habits of what we were doing.
Okay.
And I think that's the most important thing when it comes to anything in life. It's like making that initial change. It's like anything, like working out. Like I'll tell you, like I remember, like one day Patrick came to me. He's like, man, like you look bad. Like brother, like you're not like you're gonna die if you don't change what you're doing. And literally that conversation like completely changed my life too. Because I'm like, you know what? I got to get my ass into shape. I got to start working out. Got a private trainer. Started working out, and back then I was weighed one. Just got weighed yesterday from my results from last time. I was 191. I'm down to 170. But it's just that mentality, and again, it's the self-discipline and the drive, and the why behind it. And the why behind it is it's my family, it's my wife, my son, my daughter. That's my why.
Of course.
yeah, and that conversation. I remember I was sitting in my office, and I was pissed, and I was concerned because I knew something was going on. His health wasn't right, and so me being me, I figured there's a couple of ways I can approach this. So I approached the way I approach a lot of things. I walked in his office. I said, "Listen, brother, you're my business partner, but I'm going to own this business on my own because you're going to be dead soon, and I don't know what's going on, but you need to get your shit together, and you need to get your health right, and let me know how I can help." And I walked out. And I'm like, okay, that's going to go one of two ways. I have no idea how it's going to go. And I think it was the next day I get a text. He's like, asked me, "Hey, where do you get your meals from?" And I was like, oh shit, that's a positive sign, right? And then he started, "Hey, where you work out? How do I get involved in that?" Right? And so, and now, yeah, I mean, that was like a total turn. But I had that conversation for two reasons. One, I was concerned about the business because he's such a contributor. He's my partner.
Sure.
Right. But I was concerned about him because he's a friend. Right. And so, and I know he would do the same thing for me. Right. So that was a big deal. It gets me a little emotional. But it was another turning point. And I've seen the difference. I watch him walk around sometimes. I'm like, holy shit, what happened to Francisco's ass? Right. So
You got to start doing squats, bro.
but it's one other thing I want to ask you about, because I know how it was. Like when we bought the business together, we bought it in April of 2018. And we knew we were going to be partners, and there's a whole story there. how that came about and everything. But for me, it was intense because, I mean, it was awesome, right? 'Cause, oh my God, we accomplished this. But there's also that side of things like, holy shit, I can't just walk away. When I was a general manager, I could be like, hey, I'm done, whatever.
Yeah.
And I can't do that now.
You're signing the front of the checks.
Yeah, I got payroll to make. We've got a lot of team members. We've got vehicles. We got all kinds of stuff. And I was like, it was a little overwhelming. You know, I mean, I was like, I got this, but it was still, you have those moments of like, wow. And you know, it's just, I think everybody goes through that. But the thing is, do they know they're going to go through it? Right? Do they know they're going to go through it?
Yeah.
Until they actually go through it. And so, what was that transition like?
Oh man, it's another life-changing moment experience. And like Patrick's saying, I think what's really freaking keeps you out at night is when we're having those tough weeks and we're having conversations, behind closed doors, and we're like, how are we going to hit payroll? How we're going to, next, paycheck? Are we going to be able to take a paycheck? I think a lot of people don't think about that, like what really happens behind, the curtains. Everybody sees that, it's a business, making millions of dollars.
Sure.
But how much money is a business actually making? And then two, like when we bought the business, I'll be honest, it had a lot of debt. And it was a very hard transition. It's not like, we had to pay the bills, what was, owed and everything. Plus, on top of that, payroll, vehicles, insurances. I mean, it keeps you out at night.
Well, so knowing nothing about this business other than I'm able to cool my house, heat my house, turn my lights on, et cetera, et cetera. The overhead that is also involved. You mentioned vehicles, insurance,
Yeah.
a building, that type of thing.
There's a lot. There's a lot, and as you grow, which we have,
Yeah.
it becomes more. So you have to run very efficiently. You have to have the right leadership. You have to have the right team, and that's something out of the gate we had to reinvent, because there was a transition too of everybody that worked for the previous owner. Now, okay, what's going to happen? What's going to change? There was a little concern and fear. They knew us because we had been managing the business, but now it's reality. So some of them went through that as well, and so I think.
Well, I think the reality, what hit me is, look, as a comfort advisor, I was making $400,000 a year, close to $500,000, and then overnight, it's gone. Now you're a business owner.
Yeah.
And all that, profit that I was making as a professional, it's all going to the company, reinvesting.
Yeah.
For payroll.
and there's a lesson here. If you're out there in the listening to this, watching this, your salespeople should be the highest paid people in the organization, because they're driving things and are making things happen. And there's a lot of people that have an issue with that, right? But if you have a performing sales team, they should make a lot of money, right? And they deserve to, because sales is not easy. We're going to be right back, and on the other side of this break, you're going to want to be there. You're going to want to hear the story Francisco has to share, a story that changed his life, his family's life, could have had a major impact on the business, but actually is a great story in overcoming adversity. Happy New Year, Coachella Valley. This is Patrick Summers, President and CEO of General Air Conditioning and Plumbing. Listen, we all know that New Year's resolutions usually don't last, but with proper maintenance and service, your plumbing, electrical, and HVAC system will give you many years of trouble-free service. Give us a call, get it tuned up, get the inspections done. Let's make sure you're good to go all year long. Happy to take care of you. Happy New Year. Let's make this year, 2025, an amazing year. We're back at the Tradepreneur Show. Again, Patrick Summers, your host, Mike Costa, the co-host that keeps me on track. And again, Francisco Rodriguez, friend and business partner. And I really want to share the story, and I appreciate you're willing to do this, because I know this is an amazing, impactful thing in one's life. and to me, it's inspiring when I see you, because of what you had to overcome, and I'm just going to leave it at that. Why don't you tell everybody your adversity, how you overcame it?
So fuck, you're gonna make me get emotional. But so in 2017, October 2017, had an accident. Lost my hand.
Where were you when it happened?
In Alcatillo Wells.
Okay. Was it
Off-roading accident.
okay, gotcha.
So it was an off-roading accident. Got it airlifted to Palm Springs.
Okay.
From Palm Springs to San Diego.
Did you, Francisco, did you know it was, obviously if you're being airlifted somewhere, it's serious. By the time that it happened, did you say like, oh geez,
Well, you know,
this ain't good?
the crazy thing is, like I didn't feel any pain when it initially
Your body goes into shock.
Yeah,
and
it goes
protection.
into shock.
Yeah.
When I realized was I went to go take my harness off,
Okay.
and when I went to go take the other one, I had no movement.
Okay.
So that's when I realized I was like, oh fuck,
Okay.
something's wrong.
Had you severed your hand in the accident, or you had just badly injured it?
Oh, because I had my gloves on, so I couldn't even see anything.
Gotcha.
So I still remember, got airlifted, and I was, halfway sedated, and I just heard the doctor saying like, it's not good. And the doctor was saying like, look, if I need to get him out of here because what's going to happen is the only thing I can do is amputate his hand. He's too young. I've never seen something like this. Like I got to get him to where a different trauma, So
Sure.
got airlifted to San Diego, and that's unfortunately they tried to save it. But like the doctor said, look, Francisco, he goes like, I've done a lot of amputations. He goes, I did the best thing that I could do for you. He goes, I probably could have saved your thumb. He's all, but you would have had, most likely in 60, 90 days, you would have to come back to get your amputated. He goes, I was not going to put you through that. He goes, I prayed over you and
Wow.
just minimize the loss.
So Patrick, this is your tradepreneur show, but you're both. I see the love that you both have, obviously, for each other, not as only just teammates, but as friends. Where are you when this is all going down?
I'm with my son. I'm literally. I remember I was coming down a local street here, Jefferson Street, heading to Interstate 10 to go to LA with my son. We were going to see the Eagles play the Chargers.
Okay.
And this is before they had a stadium. So I was there, and I got the call from my wife.
Yeah.
Said he had an accident. He was airlifted, and now they went to the local trauma center here. They can't do anything. They took him to San Diego. He may lose his hand, but we don't know yet. So I remember my wife and I just said, okay, well, let's just pray. I said, keep me updated, and because I probably would have turned and gone immediately to the hospital, but my son and I had this day, and so I was like, okay, let's be calm about this. Let's wait and see what happens. And so we go to the game, and it was probably third quarter. I get a phone call. And this is where I get emotional because I'll never forget. I stepped out, and my wife said they had to take his hand, and I was like, fuck, like I'm trying to imagine that, and now I joke and I say I was really emotional because I'm thinking, well, can he still sell, right?
No, that is love. That is love.
But the reality of it is, it's somebody I deeply care about,
Of course.
and I just, I don't, you're just not prepared for something like that. So we finished the game, and I drove back to the desert, dropped my son off, packed some clothes, and headed to San Diego. And I got to San Diego, and he was still out, and I was sitting there with his wife and everything, and yeah, and he woke up, and it was, I don't even know. Did you know at that time when you came out, when you were waking up, that they had taken your hand?
And I was like sedated, but I could still hear everything that they were saying. Because I remember my wife, with the doctor, and she's like, doctor, like, I'm not gonna tell him. You tell him. And I'm like, well, fuck, I'm already here. Like, nobody's coming in. Like, I already heard. Like,
I didn't lose my ears. I didn't.
But my wife's all like, yeah. She's like, I was telling the doctor that, I didn't want to tell you. I'm like, well, I was hearing it the whole time. What do you mean? Like,
Yeah.
I was asleep, but I was still, hearing what you guys were saying. But, it's a life-changing event. And as, hard as it was, I think what it boils down to, it's, for me was, really life-changing, but you just got to, move forward. There's, I have my family. I remember like the first 2 days I had my pity party, which lasted, Monday and Tuesday, because my hand got amputated on a Sunday. And my pity party was Monday and Tuesday thinking like, why me? What do, how am I going to, how am I going to do? How am I going to, go on attics? How am I going to go on ladders? How am I going to, and, the biggest concern back then, like when it happened was, is Frank still going to want to sell business to me?
Okay.
Like that was my biggest concern. But I said, like, fuck this. I got to keep moving forward. Like this cannot stop me. So I said, I have my family, my daughter's, little, she's only 4. I gotta, I gotta work for them. And literally, I remember like when it happened, when I got released from the, got my discharge papers, the doctor comes into the room and he goes like, I have all your disability papers for, you're gonna probably take like, for something like this, you're gonna take 2 to 3 months off. And I'm all like, 2 to 3 months? What do you mean 2 to 3 months? For what? And I'm all like, Doc, I'm going back to work tomorrow. And my wife's all like, no, you're not. Like, what do you mean you're gonna go back to work tomorrow? I'm all like, all right, I'll take the rest of the week off. And literally on Monday, I came back to work.
Okay.
And the reason I wanted to get back right on the horse was because I truly believe that if I would have stayed at home, like I would have got severely depressed. Because, when it comes to like somebody losing a limb, and it doesn't matter what's your hand, your leg, I would say that 90% of it, it's a mental thing. And the other 10% is the disability. Because the mental, you're always thinking, what are people going to say? What are they going to think?
Yeah.
It's all that goes through your head all that was going through my my head.
Understood.
Yeah. I remember like when it first happened, I was had like a big old bandage on, and I would go to like a restaurant, or I was at at a line or something, and there was like somebody looking at me. I'm like, I saved somebody shark attack.
That is the greatest answer. Shark attack. Patrick, I mean, so, we know he's back home. He's going to take the week off. And you jokingly said, is he going to be able to sail again? But obviously, you're starting to think, okay, where do we pivot and make sure that he still is successful with us?
Yeah, well, I knew he wouldn't be taking a lot of time off.
Okay.
I just know him, right? And like he knows I wouldn't either, right? It's just we have a lot of things like that in common, and but I also knew it was going to be a mind fuck, right? And I remember, I don't know if he remembers this, but I'm thinking, okay, what do you say to somebody, right? And so he's laying in the hospital bed, and I'm sitting there in a chair, and he had his hand all wrapped up in these bandages. And I remember he opened his eyes, he was waking up. And he was just looking at me, I was looking at him, and I said, don't let this get your head stuck up your ass, right? I'm very elegant with words. But I knew what he just said, what he just so elegantly said in the amputation. It's 90% mental. I like 10%, like he went through it, so he knows. But I knew the biggest challenge was going to be the mental challenge, right? And but I also knew he would get through it. And now it took adjusting for me. I mean, for him especially, right? Like I'm thinking, like, how do you tie your shoes? How do you do this? How do you button your pants and everything like that? And so I do remember his hand was still bandaged. Maybe it was a month after the accident. So we had some training to go to, and we went to Dallas. We were in training, and we go on a break, and we go to the restroom. When I get back to the break, he's like 30 minutes. He's not back. I'm like, what the hell? Where the hell's Francisco? he finally comes in. He's like, where the hell did you go? I said, well, I came back here. He's like, dude, I couldn't get my belt done. And I'm like,
The stuff we take for
and I felt like an ass. I was like, because, but part of that was I never saw him missing a hand because that's not who he is,
Yeah.
right? He's Francisco. So I sometimes, even then, it wasn't really registering with me.
Right.
And now it really doesn't register with me. I don't even notice, right? It's like, and I catch myself sometimes, like we'll be down in the huddle, will be something, and he's got like a coffee and he's got stuff, and I start handing him shit. and he grabs it, right? I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, but it's because I don't see no hand. I see Francisco, right? And so
that's the way it's supposed to be.
that's the way it's supposed to be. And so I think what I really wanted him to share that story, and I know maybe that was a little bit of therapy for both of us because we haven't talked about it in a while. But it's something that I've grown through the experience. Obviously, not to the extent that he has. I'm incredibly proud of him, of what you've done. I mean, there's not many people that can do that. But again, I think it goes back to mindset and why that's so important. But we're going to have Francisco in the next episode. And because Francisco is still, in addition to being a co-owner, is a sales manager and is still out closing deals. And so in this, now that you know Francisco's story, in the next episode, he's going to share with you what it takes to dominate as a sales professional, whether you're a technician or you're a comfort advisor. And maybe you're in a totally different trade. Maybe you're not even in the trades. Maybe you're selling cars. Maybe you're selling homes. I am telling you, this man is a wizard. He amazes me every day. So join us in the next episode and learn his secrets. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Patrick Summers, the host, Mike Acosta, co-host, Francisco, who will be joining us in the next episode. I want to thank everybody behind the camera that's helping us here today. Check us out. Follow us at the YouTube. We're on the YouTube. The YouTube's great because you get to see how good looking Francisco is if you do tune in. But also like, subscribe, comment, or anywhere you can find podcasts and all social media channels.